All right, so the Tory Lanez trial is officially done. The jury came back with guilty verdicts on all 3 counts. And so I wanted to talk about it because, everybody and their mom is going to be talking about this case. It's been all over the news on ABC, on BBC, on People, on TMZ. Everybody's talking about it, but they're taking, different angles. And I'm giving you something that is, pretty exclusive. As a criminal defense attorney who has been through the fire, I currently actually have an attempted murder case now where my client's alleged to have shot somebody. So I've definitely been through the fire. I've represented people in homicide cases, attempted murder, assault with deadly weapons, a bunch of firearms cases. So, we're just coming with an exclusive perspective that I think is going to be unique. And I'm going to single out a couple of issues that I found to be interesting about this case. And, if you have questions about this trial, let me know. Just leave me a question in the comment below. And then also, I'm curious, did this verdict surprise you? Or is it how you thought the case was going to play out? Do you think it's fair? Do you think it's fair that Tory Lanez was found guilty of this crime, or do you think he's been wronged throughout this process? I'm curious what your thoughts are, so leave me a comment below. But let's get into it. So the 2 issues, or the 2 people I want to mainly focus on, are Megan and Kelsey. And we're going to start with Megan. And one of the issues that I think if you were surprised by this verdict, it's probably because you thought that because Megan lied, that the jury was just not going to believe anything that she said, or they should not have believed anything that she said, and that, she would just be completely not credible, and ultimately the jury would not believe her, and ultimately would side with Tory Lanez and ultimately find him guilty. Obviously, that did not happen, and I'm going to tell you a few reasons why. So, again, the people's thought was because everybody knows, right? She even came out and said, on national TV, gave an interview saying that she lied. So we know that when the incident initially occurred and she reported what had happened, she said that, her feet had been cut by glass. She did not give any indication that she had been shot. And she ultimately explained why this was, because, she was dealing with, all black people, I believe. I'm pretty sure the security guard was black as well. And, there having been a shooting in an upscale neighborhood, off the hills of George Floyd, off the hills of a bunch of stuff that's been going on in terms of police just, exercising excessive force against black people, even using deadly force. This was a situation where she didn't want to risk it and ultimately lied about what had happened, both when it came to the police and when it came to the hospital. And so people were saying like, oh, she's a liar, you cannot believe anything she said. And that's what people really, and I think a lot of them were Tory Lanez or are Tory Lanez fans, and that gave them fuel for their fire to believe that there was no way that a jury would ultimately convict Tory Lanez. But here's where the legal analysis comes in. So once they're, obviously the prosecution is going to put their case in chief on, so they're going to call all their witnesses. The defense obviously has an opportunity to cross-examine them. And then the defense puts on their case in chief. They're able to call their witnesses. The prosecution is able to cross-examine them. Well, once the jury has all the evidence, so they have all the evidence. They've heard the testimony. They've seen any videos. They've heard any recordings. They've seen pictures. They have all the evidence, but they don't know what to do yet with that evidence. And that's the purpose of jury instructions. So the judge is going to read them a bunch of instructions, which is going to include how to analyze the evidence. It's going to give them the relevant law for the offenses that are being charged so that they can know what to do. And so one of those instructions has to do with assessing witnesses, because as you have different people testifying throughout the trial, they have to figure out what they should believe and what they should not believe, how much weight they should give to testimony and how much weight they should not. And the fascinating thing is you're just asked to call upon your life experience in being able to assess witness credibility. So we all know when you're talking to somebody, we all have our BS meter. Some of our BS meters is better than others, right? You see some people get lied to all the time, and you're like, how did you even believe? So the court in fancy language is going to ask you to bring in your BS meter to the trial, and they're going to ask you, okay, how did the witness come off on the stand? What was their demeanor? What was their body language? Were they closed off? Were they not looking forward? Were they evasive? Or did they seem to speak with sincerity and candor? And did they really seem invested in the court process, or did they not want to be there? You can really look at a person's body language and listen to their words and assess their credibility that way. And so, and that's what they would have been called upon, in terms of Megan's testimony, even though she lied before about what had happened and admitted that she lied. One of the interesting things about that jury instruction has to do with when a person lies. And there's a part of the jury instruction that basically says that if you believe or if you find that a witness lied about something that's material, so material meaning something that's really significant, not just something, minor or ticky-tack, but if you believe that they lied about something material, then you can choose whether or not to, basically discredit everything that they said. If you just believe they're an outright liar, then you can choose not to believe anything that they said. And I think that's the sort of, it goes along the lines of what is intuitive in terms of when we think about somebody who is a liar, right? So you've definitely come across people in your life, hopefully you don't have them in your life still, where you cannot believe not a thing that they say. Because why? Because they have a character for being liars. They have a character for not telling the truth. But let's be honest, you, me, everybody has lied at a certain point in their life. Sometimes, perhaps more than we'd like to admit. And just because you've lied at a certain point in your life doesn't mean you're lying about everything, right? So, when you stole a pack of gum as a kid, when the dude cheated on his taxes, when the dude cheated on his wife, all those situations might be times that they've lied in their life, but they could be telling the truth about, they didn't commit domestic violence, or, they didn't steal from their company, or, whatever the situation is that they're called to, that they're being asked to tell the truth about. It could, if they have lied in the past, it could, have an effect on their credibility. But just because you've lied in your life, and even something on point as Megan lying in the situation, just because she lied then doesn't mean that when she took the stand, she was lying then. And obviously the jury ultimately found, hey, we can understand that she lied back then, but we believe her today. We believe her today. And they had to have believed that, otherwise they wouldn't have came back with the verdict that they came back with. And this is what I was talking about when it came to the R. Kelly case, because a lot of people were saying, and I don't even remember the girl's name at this point, but the main witness in that case, she had admittedly lied about a whole bunch of things. She had gotten caught up in lies about different things, but ultimately there wasn't going to be anyone who was able to contradict or refute her testimony when she said, hey, I was 14 years old or 15 years old when I started to have an intimate relationship with R. Kelly, and we did these things, and I was a minor, and all of that. You could throw all the mud at her you want. You could say she was fast. You could say she was looking for it. You could blame it on the parents. You could say whatever you want to say, but no one was going to be able to get on that stand and say that what she said happened did not happen. And that's exactly what happened in this case. That, again, we have somebody, yes, who admittedly lied, But when it came down to it, when she said something to the effect of Daystar Peterson shot me, there wasn't anybody who was ultimately able to take the stand and say, no, this did not happen, including Tory Lanez himself. He did not take the stand to be able to say, no, I never shot her. And so when there's not that refuting of testimony, then, and you find the person credible, because they could have just said, even if there wasn't somebody to refute her testimony, they could have said, well, we don't find her credible. We don't believe her. But ultimately they found her credible. And that's why at the end of the day, even though she lied, and even though you can throw all kinds of mud at her and call into question why she would have lied, but at the end of the day, they believed her testimony, and that's why, the verdict came down the way that it did. And realistically, I think that you'd have to be a really unreasonable person to not understand why she would lie the way she did, at least based on her explanation. And I don't have any reason to, necessarily question why she, I can't question why she would come up with that. It seemed to make sense to me in the context of what happened. But yeah, so the jury ultimately believed her despite the lies, and that's why. So let me know what you think about that. And now I want to talk about Kelsey. And so, Kelsey, when she ultimately took the stand, she was actually, it's my understanding that she was painted in the opening statement as, a star witness, right? So you had Megan Thee Stallion, obviously, as the then alleged victim, the actual victim, since, the verdict came down as a guilty verdict. So with the victim, she's obviously going to be the ultimate star witness, but, if there's star A, star B would have been Kelsey. But interestingly enough, she really went sideways on the prosecution, came up with this whole convenient amnesia thing. But before we even got there, she was properly advised not to testify because there was a potentiality of her incriminating herself. And so her lawyers properly advised her, not to testify. So she pled the fifth, and then she was granted immunity. All right, so you have two different types of immunity. You have total immunity, which is just, outright immunity. And then you have use immunity, which then means that the prosecution cannot use your testimony against you. Now, if they find other means, if there's other evidence or other testimony that would support a finding that you may have done what you're alleged to have done, then they can use that against you. They just can't use your testimony against you. So she was going to plead the fifth, and then she was granted the use immunity, which then meant she would then be obligated to testify. If she tried to not testify, even after being granted immunity, then she could be held in contempt, and that could land you in jail for a few days. So the immunity issue, again, she needed immunity because she was potentially going to give self-incriminating testimony. And in fact, the defense was really trying to put this case on her and try and say that, hey, it was Kelsey that shot Megan over, this love triangle gone bad, two besties, no longer besties. And because of this, that's why Kelsey shot Megan Thee Stallion. But, and because the defense was really, pushing towards that, it was really important that Kelsey ultimately be given that immunity. But then when she testified, I can guarantee you that the prosecution probably did not anticipate that she was going to go sideways. And that's that is the fascinating part of trial, and that's the nerve-wracking part of trial. You never know what's going to happen, right? So so that's sort of the adrenaline rush of trying cases. You never know. You can sometimes have an idea based on someone giving an interview either to your own defense investigators or to the police or to the DA investigators. And but yeah, sometimes people are just going to go sideways. They can lie, or they can, realistically forget. Sometimes trials, and especially when you have, witnesses who just happen to be percipient witnesses. They weren't part of the case, but they happened to see something that they weren't planning on seeing. And sometimes trials can happen 2, 3, or even a year later. and they just don't remember. Their memory isn't quite as clear, or you can have people who appear to be just purposely evasive. And that's what, based on what I've seen, it seems like she was doing, just really convenient amnesia, because, her interview with the DA investigator, she was very lucid, seemed to understand the question, would answer in a reasonable amount of time, and had details, whereas at the trial she didn't. And so that is the reason why it's so important that both on the defense side and the prosecution side, that interviews end up getting recorded, and that you have an investigator to be able to take notes and prepare a report, so you have what they said during that interview, such that if they go sideways at trial, then you have that statement. You have the report, and you have the recording. And so, because of a couple of legal issues that end up happening, the prosecution was able to play that recording where she said, hey, and admitted that she had sent out a text saying, hey, Tory shot Megan. Again, another piece of evidence that, would have been really difficult to ultimately refute. Her saying that, hey, he offered me $1 million, which is going to be another damning piece of evidence that Tory never got on the stand and said, no, I didn't actually, offer her $1 million not to testify or not to participate in the process. And she said that he had shot her. So that's the thing. I mean, I think the biggest shock to most people would have had to do with Megan's testimony, and we broke down why, even though she initially lied, why she could still be considered a credible witness, and why the jury did find her to be a credible witness. So ultimately, you just based on what happened at the preliminary hearing, based on everything that I've seen in this case, it was not a surprise to me that they ultimately would find that Tory Lanez did shoot this weapon, did shoot Megan Thee Stallion, and was in possession of this firearm. So, yeah, that's going to be it. I hope you got something out of this, and so yeah, like I said again. Leave me some comments below if you have any questions about this case. Let me know what your reactions are. Yeah, if you got something out of this, show me some love, hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and make sure you turn on the notifications so you never miss a new video when it drops. As always, I want to thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace.